Welcome back to DIYWilly. Today we have another Chevy Silverado in the driveway, and it belongs to a friend of ours, and he wants a leveling kit installed. So he picked up a 2.5-inch kit from MOTOFABLiFts. This is a leveling kit. It goes on top of the springs and should raise the vehicle 2.5 inches from where it is now. So doing that will give you more ground clearance and give you room for larger tires, increasing your ground clearance even more. So let's get this open and check out what's inside. Alright. Oh, we got some nice packaging. Attention, stop. Basically, this is just saying that the spacers aren't 2.5 inches. It's not a 1-to-1 ratio. So if you order a 2-inch kit, the spacer will measure less than 2 inches, but will give you 2 inches of lift. It was always what I've known, rule of thumb, is for every 1/2 inch of change, you get 1 inch at the spindle. So this being 2.5, it would probably be like 1 inch and 3/4 maybe, or 1 inch and a, yeah, I think 1 inch and 3/4. We'll measure it, we'll find out. It won't be 2 inches. And it gives us a nice handy little packet of hardware. Another little packing material, and look at that, a nice spacer, threaded inserts, and holes for the stock bolts to go through. Very nice, very nice. Okay, again, 2 of them, 1 for each side, and some instructions. Dun, dun, dun. Instructions are always nice. Even though I've done this kit before, I wouldn't really need instructions, but we'll take a look at it. Yeah. Pretty good. Did you see how I did that so fast? I don't know if you guys remember, there used to be a guy on late night TV, Craig Ferguson, and he used to do these tweets where he'd read them to everybody, and he would go like, "Oh yeah, this one," and he'd flash it really fast and nobody could ever read what it said. I think that was the whole idea behind it, but I used to really enjoy that show. Anyway, back to what we're doing here. Alright, spacer thickness is not 1-to-1. We already went through that. Watch videos, YouTube, MOTOFABLiFTS. Getting started, jack the vehicle. Support the vehicle jack stands, make sure the front wheels are on the ground, remove the front wheels, blah 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 blah, ABS sensors, blah blah blah, 18mm, blah 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 blah, sway bar nut, lower strut mount. Yeah, I think we got this. Let's look at some of the tools. Now, I didn't read the instructions, okay? Like I said, I've done this kit already. I don't really need the instructions. This is something I can do easily without thinking about it. I change struts on these things all the time. I'm not too worried about it, but I'll try to discuss what goes on during the lift. And if you've never installed one of these kits, please be sure and read this several times till you fully understand what needs to be done. Alright, let's get going. Now we got ourselves a set of jack stands standing by, ready for action. We got a jack ready for service. And anytime you're lifting a vehicle, always make sure you put a chock behind whatever it is, the front or the rear tire, whichever end is staying on the ground, put a chock. Now this truck has factory wheels, but still they're a good polished aluminum, and you want to protect them. So you take these center caps off by using a little screwdriver or a tool that usually comes with the truck in the wrench set. But I just take a screwdriver, and if you've got the nice wheels, take a little time, put a piece of tape on there, kind of protect it from metal to metal on there. And yeah, there's the lug nuts. It's a good idea to loosen the lug nuts on the ground, because it's a lot harder to do if you don't have an impact or some specialty tool when the truck's in the air. So removing the struts, you're gonna want to loosen the 3 bolts on top, 1, 2, and 3. These have plastic wire holders on them. They just pop off real easy. But before you get the truck up in the air, it's a lot easier to do this now than when it's in the air and you got to use like a stepping ladder or something to get in there. So a long extension and your tools will get in there. We'll get the right size in a minute. You've got the 3 on each side. I just use a screwdriver to get up underneath there and pop them off. I got the 2 of them off like this. We'll reinstall them later, but for now they're out of the way. Now we've got 18mm bolts, and I'll get my impact and my 18mm with a long extension, and we'll get these off. Helps to go the right way. There we go. Now we can just set these bolts aside. I'll put them in the extra battery tray. To loosen lug nuts, I like to use a breaker bar. I've got a 22mm socket here. I'll just put it on there and just give it a little twist just to loosen them up. You can hear them pop. You don't want to take them off, just loosen them. Now before we get the lift on, get it too high in the air, we're going to try to get a measurement, and we're at about 36 3/4. So we're going to add about 2.5 inches to that. We'll see what we get at the end. So we've got it jacked up, got the jack stands safely placed underneath the vehicle, and the vehicle is sitting on the jack stands. Now we're going to get to taking the tire off. Now remember, we loosened these when it was on the ground. So even though I'm using an impact, we don't really need it. It just makes life easier. Oops. As long as you're not putting them back on. I always save the top one for last. That'll be the one that's holding the weight of the wheel. Take the lug nuts, put them back in the center cap. Now taking a look at the suspension, we've already got the 3 top bolts loose. We're going to take the speed sensor ABS wire off and just kind of put it up out of the way along with the brake line. We're going to disconnect the steering arm and the sway bar brace on this side. Then we can loosen the nut on the upper ball joint, hit it with a hammer. We'll show you that, and that will break it free, and the whole thing will drop, and we'll be able to take, once we loosen the bolts on the bottom of the shock, we'll be able to pull the strut out, probably out this way towards the front, and then we can start the reassembly with the new spacers on top of the strut. And we'll be good to go starting putting it back together. Okay, so we got to get these sway bar bracket off. We're just going to hit it with a 15 on the bottom and a 15-inch box in on the top. There we go. Now what this will do is allow the suspension room to go down. We'll do the same on the other side, so the sway bar can move. So we've got the bottom shock bolts out. We've got the steering nut on the bottom loose. We're ready to hit this with a hammer to bust it up, and we'll get the upper ball joint here in just a minute. I'm gonna go ahead and get this stuff done, and you'll see. We're going to loosen the nut on the bottom of the upper ball joint. We're gonna bring it down, but we're not gonna take it all the way off. We're gonna hit it with a hammer right there, and it will bust that ball joint out of its socket. We'll do the same thing for the steering, and then the whole upper and lower A-arm will come down, enough for us to get the strut out. All right, so we've got it all broken apart now. Got the upper ball joint. This is an 18mm nut. Once you run this down, give it a couple good whacks right there with a good hammer, and it'll separate this ball joint. Same as goes for the steering. Give it a couple good whacks right on the spindle, and it will bust that loose too. Always replace the nuts back where they came from. Just makes them easier to remember. We don't want to put tension on the brake line or the speed sensor line, the ABS line. So it's always a good idea to put something to support the weight, because right now there's no tension on that line at all. So we're ready to go ahead and pull it out. It can move down if we need it. And nope, we don't need it. It comes right out. All right, so looking at the assembly, we got the hardware packet. You're gonna want to take out 3 studs and 3 of the lock washers or lock nuts. And then we're going to install the studs first. They just thread in. They're a number 8 Allen wrench. You can put them in just like that. All right, now that we've got the studs installed in the spacer, I just ran them in with the impact and the 8mm Allen head. You could use a little bit of Loctite, blue or red, to hold those in better. I just zipped them in with the impact. Then you put them on, align the holes. It'll only go on one way. Align the holes and use the provided hardware to run them down. Now these are 18mm. And we'll go ahead and just run them down. The socket fits inside. Just like that. Ready to go back together. So we've got the spacer installed on the coilover. We're just going to lift it back into place. Making sure you get the holes on the top. Just like that. Now we can put it all back together. So while tightening up the upper ball joint, if the whole ball joint tends to spin on you, take a 6mm Allen, stick it in the hole on the bottom. That way you can hold the ball joint from turning, and then tighten up your upper ball joint nut. Problem solved. Next we'll put the steering arm back together and the sway bar, and we're good to go. All right, so that driver's side is all done. Everything's put back together and torqued. Proper specifications. Now it's really hard to get in here and torque these up here. So I just, for the upper ball joint, I just put them in as tight as I can get them and put a little extension and give it another extra oop and call it a day. On the bottom, if this one turns on you, you can hold a 10mm wrench on the bottom and then the 21 on the top to tighten the bolt. Same thing, get it as tight as you can. Once you get it tight, put a little extension on the wrench and give it just another good pull, and that'll tighten up too. Bar is done and tightened down. Now you want to make sure you have the same on both sides. Right now I have about 3/4 of an inch between the nut and the top of the bolt, and it's 3/4 of an inch on the other side, so it'll be equal. Probably while we did this job, we got a little bit of grease on the rotor, so we're going to want to spray the rotor down before we put it back together. And we've got the 10mm bolts holding the brake lines and the ABS lines back in place, so everything is exactly as it was. Top bolts are torqued down on the top. Everything looks beautiful. I'll try to put some torque specifications in the description, and if it helps you out. So there you go. Driver's side is all done. And I'm going to move to the passenger side. For the passenger side, just going to tighten down these 10mm bolts to hold the ABS line on. Get those good and tight. And we'll wrap this job up. We'll clean the rotors, put the tires back on, and we will be done. Get the truck back on the ground, check the torque on the wheels, and measure it out again. See how we did. Should be 2.5 inch lift. See what we got. If I remember right, it was measured out 36 3/4 before the lift. So we'll see what we got now. I wish we could have changed out the struts too. These struts have over 100,000 miles on them. It would have been nice since we had everything apart, just to put the new parts on it too. But hey, you know, not everybody's in a position to do that. So we'll do it at another time when he decides. We'll just get this tightened down and we'll be good. There we go. Ouch. That's the last one right there. Everything is good. All tightened down. Everything is tight. We'll clean up the rotor and we'll put the tire back on. So we've got the lift done. We'll measure it out right now. Before we measured 36 3/4. Now we're right at 40. So this is going to settle a little bit, probably down to about 39 3/4, and we should be good. So yeah, it turned out really good. Torqued the wheel lugs to 100 foot-pounds. Put the caps back on. We're good to go. We're out of here. So that wraps up the install of the MOTOFAB 2.5 inch leveling kit. Turned out really good. Tires back on. Those are really good. Took a minute and polished out the headlights. They were really bad. Those turned out excellent as well. I know I didn't show them before, but if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And yeah, always come back to DIYWilly for your Silverado, Nissan Frontier, and mini bike needs. All right, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.